Hello, my name is Frank D'Onofrio. I'm with New Right Network Plus, and this is the inaugural virtual town hall. Hello, my name is Frank D'Onofrio, and I'm here with Kimberly Klacik in the inaugural town hall, and I'm here to speak with you today and to work with you. And Kimberly Klacik is my guest. Kimberly is running for the special election in the seat in Maryland, District 7. Kimberly, tell us a little bit about your campaign.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Right now, we're in the final stretch. We're in the last days here of the special general. We won the primary on February 4th against 7 other Republicans. We now advanced, and we are against Kwesi Nfume, who held the seat prior to Rep. Cummings. And he was actually there from 1987 to 1995. And so I am basically in a fight against him to basically take the seat and make some real changes in District 7. So, this has been obviously a very heated and contested race. But I think we do have a shot because I do think that there's many people that just want to change. So we're dealing with voters' unrest, and we're dealing with people that want to keep things the same, but I don't think they're the majority right now. hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Oh.
Okay, finally, you're back. I apologize.
Oh, no, I was here. Yeah.
I know we had some technical difficulties. So, Kim, we'll talk to you a little bit about the campaign. Tell me where you stand right now.
So I'm not exactly sure. As you know, this is changed into a mail-in only election. So all we can see is really which part of the district has mailed in their ballots as far as county. So we look at Howard County, Baltimore County, and Baltimore City. And so far, we see that the counties, both Baltimore and Howard, have mailed in, a good amount, but nothing nowhere near 500,000, which is apparently the amount of ballots that actually went out. So we're not quite sure where we stand. We're just kind of hoping that we're somewhat in the game. Most of the votes for the Democratic opponent would come from Baltimore City. And as far as we know right now, that is where the least amount of ballots has come in. So we're not quite sure. We're just hoping for the best. Of course, people can go and vote in person on Tuesday, April 28th. There's 3 polling centers that's open. And, I'll be making my rounds the entire day. We have volunteers that will be there electioneering. But again, we have no idea where we stand. I know they're going to make an announcement on April 28th to say exactly where they are at that point in time, which I'm actually against because, if you can make an announcement that day, of course, anyone listening to that would say, okay, well, we could adjust the numbers to make sure that by May 8th, we have the winner that we want to have.
Right.
So if I come in the lead on April 28th, who knows what could happen until May 8th when they want to actually announce the winner. So I'm not very happy about that, but there's nothing I can do about it at this moment.
I said May 8th, so they're going to wait a whole, 10 days before they come up with a winner?
Well, you can mail in your ballot as late as April 28th, I believe, until 8 p.m. So They have to wait for those ballots to come in, and then they have to check and make sure people did not vote twice. So it's going to take some time, and they're running on a shortage as far as employees because they have to maintain social distancing as they're canvassing. So there's a lot up against us as we try to figure out who will fill the rest of this term.
Well, Kim, I'm telling you, I've been covering this since the beginning. There's just so much going on, in terms of how, the election is being held, who's actually counting the ballots. And, we just don't want another Florida where you got boxes coming in because, we can, figure out how many votes you need to win. And that's something we want to protect against. What are you telling your supporters in terms of voting? What's your message to them?
Well, and it's tough because as many Republicans, I'm not for in mail-in ballots. Anything could happen. I'm asking them to win. One, because we're in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. Our Governor Larry Hogan, who I trust and believe, says we are entering our peak on April 29th, which is Wednesday. So, of course, I want everyone to stay home and mail their ballots in so they're not in a situation where they could possibly be infected or, take this virus home to another individual within their home. So, of course, I want everyone to vote by mail. There are going to be some people that want to vote in person, and I totally understand that. I'm the same way. I like to vote in person, but I just don't know how safe it is. And so it's disturbing to me that, I understand that they're trying this out for the first time in the special election, hoping to get it right. But there's been a lot of people that have told me they haven't received their ballot. And as far as we know, ballots went out, the last batch of ballots went out last Monday. So they should have received them by now. So, it's kind of heartbreaking because, of course, one of the rights of the American people is the right to vote. And we're seeing that crumble with this special election. We saw it happen in Milwaukee. And we're probably going to see it as we approach November. Our June 2nd election is now mail-in. And so I don't know what we're going to do, but as Republicans, we really need to fight back against this. You can't tell me that I can go to Walmart or go to Target but I can't go to vote or I can't go to church. Something just doesn't add up there. Liquor stores are still open, but we can't go to church and pray on Easter Sunday. So there's issues there that as Republicans we need to fight back.
Oh, I totally agree with you. I don't. Republicans or Democrats, as citizens of this nation, we have an obligation to our children and grandchildren and those who come after us, that we maintain the liberties that those who came before us fought so hard for. This just doesn't smell right to me. It's not acceptable. But on the other hand, what you want to prevent as well is you want to prevent voter suppression, and you want to prevent duplicate voting. You want to prevent one person's vote counting more than another's, which would knock out someone's vote, and that's just not acceptable either.
Absolutely. I mean, when we looked at this in the very beginning, you mailed out all of the ballots, and then afterwards you said you were going to open 3 polling sites. And I say, I say the governor. To me, that just obviously breeds voter fraud, election fraud, and voter suppression. And then you have so many people calling us, emailing us, saying, my wife received her ballot, but I haven't received mine. Or, my son received his ballot, but me and my wife hasn't received ours. And so you just wonder what is going on. And, we requested the voter rolls from the Maryland State Board of Elections. We requested that weeks ago. They still have not sent us anything. We actually paid for it a week ago. They have not sent us a thing. And so for me, I don't know if you saw with Judicial Watch, they actually had a court order for the voter rolls in Montgomery County, a part of Maryland, to be put forth and shown publicly. We need that to happen in District 7, and I believe it need to happen in the entire state of Maryland. I had some people complain to us in the past week saying, I had an aunt who passed away 5 years ago, and she received the ballot in the mail, but I haven't received mine. So how could that be? And, and we still, like I said, we're still waiting for the voter rolls. There's no way that this has been cleared. They didn't have time to clear it. They barely had time to send the ballots out. So there's no way they had time to send 2 pieces of mail to individuals to make sure their addresses were still current and accurate. So there's a lot that's going on here. Like I said before, whether we win or lose, this will be contested. And some people say, well, if you win it, just leave it alone. But I'm saying, no, this goes against the right of the voter. This goes against everything that we fought for in this country. And so I will fight, even if I win, I will fight to make sure this doesn't happen again in any other election.
I agree, Kim, and I think that's an important stand to have. We're going to get right to some questions, if that's okay. I'm going to ask you a few questions. One comes from a voter out there. Okay, says, what is your stance on the protests occurring against the closing of businesses due to the COVID-19 virus?
Yeah, so I was very upset when I saw that. First of all, there was a cap on the PPE, which didn't allow small businesses to really claim what's going on. They wanted people to keep their employees on and not file for unemployment. But then when the money ran out, they were kind of like, okay, well, I guess we'll talk about it again. See, there's a lot of problems for me when it comes to members of Congress. You see,
Kim, we lost you on that one. Could you repeat that?
Yes. Do you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yes.
Okay, and I apologize. It's all my fault here, being traveling. But we need to get members of Congress that are in office to fight for the people that they were elected to represent. And that is our main problem. There shouldn't be a decision to make whether or not you bail out small businesses and their employees. These are the people that elected you. These are the people that donated to your campaign. And these are the people that still pay your salary. The members of Congress today, they're still getting paid. They're not feeling this hardship that many Americans are feeling today. And so we need to step up and say, you know what? Here's what happens. Here's what we got to do to make sure this country, comes back economically without any, problems or issues. the amount of people that have filed for unemployment, the amount of people that are still waiting for checks is unbelievable. And you have to understand, of course, when you have government involved, this is what's going to happen. And I hope people are paying attention, because this is what socialism looks like. This is what Medicare for all looks like. And people need to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I know. I mean, if you go to your grocery store, you and I never had to worry growing up, maybe your grandparents did in the Depression and things like that, about having to get things. Okay, when we grew up, everything was pretty much plentiful. We didn't have to worry. You go to a grocery store and the aisles are packed with food and goods. And now all of a sudden, you got to worry about getting, I hate to say this, you got to worry about getting toilet paper.
Yeah.
And why? Not in, this never happened in this country. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is something I've been talking about for years. We've had a shortage of truck drivers for about 3 years now. And this is something that we could have taken up in a city like Baltimore, where we could have taught, trade or skill and do something about, we have an organization called Maryland New Directions that have people come in. They would learn whatever they have to learn for their CDL licensing. They do behind the wheel training with Allstate, and they get them on the road within weeks. And so I've always said, why don't we take full advantage of that, especially for those coming out of high schools that maybe don't want to go into college, those coming out of the prison system that want to re-enter society. Why don't we take advantage of that? And so we have all these job training programs, but they're not really training for jobs. A lot of that is a cover for getting, federal funds within some of these nonprofits, but we have to get people trained and employed. Truckers, they start out within 50 grand. They have health benefits, and you can live right in the area in which you live now and still be a trucker and then driving across the country. We wouldn't have these shortages if we really took advantage and understood the need and be prepared for situations like this. We weren't prepared for a pandemic. Right now we've got over 25,000 students within the Baltimore area that doesn't have the equipment to learn at home. That's an issue. Kids in Baltimore City schools are already behind. So now they're behind even more because of this pandemic. But yet the CEO, Sonia Santalis, the superintendent, is getting paid $325,000 a year. How is that possible? Not to mention her kids go to school, private school in the county. They're not even going to a city public school. So there's a lot of issues that need to be addressed. And I think when you vote for someone like my opponent in Fume, who's already been in office, you're basically voting for the same exact thing. The cover-ups, the lack of transparency, the lack of oversight. And of course, they have friends where they cover for them the entire time. He wrote a letter to the judge for Mayor Pugh. Our mayor was indicted on corruption charges. And he said, she's 75 years old. I don't think she should serve any time. But what kind of crap is that? If you do the crime, you do the time. I don't care how old you are. So these are things that we have to take into consideration when we vote for certain people for office. I know his big thing is experience matters. My experience for the last 8 years is getting people employed. And the only way you're going to lift anyone out of poverty is with employment. He's fighting for things like adding money to the SNAP program or student loan forgiveness. And all those things are great. But when you do economic development or infrastructure, you already set people up to make money to handle just those things and do more. Less government means more, and people need to understand who they're voting for.
Kim, I can guarantee you that the kids in Baltimore aren't taking liberal arts classes. Okay.
Yeah.
They're out there trying to find a job that they can work in. Okay, and get a job when they get out of college. They're not they're not going to school to no offense to the art majors out there, but they're not taking art classes. Kim, I got a question from an average dude. The Twitter, his name is An Average Dude. He said, Kim, horrible public education, unprecedented corruption, drugs, abortions, welfare, housing slums, desperate welfare seniors on buses, offering cash cards for votes, emptying city coffers. For decades, the Democrat Party has sold out, stole from. And what is your stance on that?
Yeah, that sounds like the typical Democrat commercial or campaign ad. The problem is Democrats for a long time have been using the struggles in the urban community to leverage federal funds or whatever they can. So they pocket some of the kickback and they keep people dependent on them. So they always have to turn to them when there is an issue. You know, that is a problem. And it's so hard because it's been going on for decades within the Baltimore area, where it's so hard to explain to people that you don't have to live like this. You don't have to depend on the government to basically get by. You know, you see all of these people. I know people have internet today, right? They've got Instagram, they've got Twitter. They see people going on all these trips and vacations, and they probably wonder, why can't I do these things? And it's because, you know what? You have to be able to take your own destiny into your own hand. If you don't, you end up living off the government and only skating by the best you can with what they give you. And that's how they want it. That's how they want it. That's how they get the votes every time. And so, you know, this whole time when I was campaigning, I was just trying to explain to people, like, look, there's so much more to life. And you can do so much more if you work hard. And this is the land of opportunity. I'll tell you, Frank, you know, I went to Bowie State University and I dropped out. You know, I dropped out and I did not give up. I continued to work hard and I continued to make sure I did what I had to do to not only survive, but exceed expectations. And when you have that within you, you have that work ethic in you, you end up going a lot further. And so I know a lot of people do. We now, you know, we look at the squeegee kids. A lot of people talk about the squeegee kids on the corners, washing windows, you know, attacking people for just dollars. But think about their work ethic. That's what I think about. I say, look, these kids are out here maybe 9-10 hours a day. Just think about what they could be doing 9 or 10 hours a day in a career. And so that's what we have to do. We have to change the mindset.
Yeah, with that kind of tenacity as well. Think about it, okay? Because honestly, if you're hard out there, if you're out there in the sun, in the rain, in the snow, whatever, in the cold weather, trying to get a couple of bucks to get, you know, to get somebody to clean your windshield, imagine if they had somebody like yourself, Kim, who's out there trying to get people jobs, trying to show them the way to go. I think one of the other things in our society that we're lacking, Kim, is we're lacking mentors. We're lacking people who'll stand up to ensure that people can live a better life. They can teach people how to get what they need and what they want from the education system. Kim, tell us a little bit about your background in education. I'd love to know more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, coming up in middle school, high school, I always thought I was do broadcast journalism. When I was 15 years old, though, I lost all my hair to alopecia, and it was devastating. I guess you could say it was a traumatic experience. And I honestly just kind of gave up mentally, physically, emotionally. But as I grew older and I worked in the hotel industry, I thought, you know what, I should never give up on my dreams because of something as far as doing with my appearance. And so I decided I was going to, you know, volunteer on Capitol Hill. I got involved in my nonprofit a bit more and just, you know, reaching out to different individuals. One day I went on Capitol Hill and interviewed Congressman Trey Gowdy during the Benghazi committee hearings. And this was the night before he interviewed Hillary Clinton. And I interviewed him. I just actually knocked on his office door and said, hey, I'm here with Klacik. It was a blog site I was writing for. I said, you know, I'm here to interview you. And he goes, okay, well, yeah, go ahead. I have time. And that interview alone led to going to One American News and Fox News and, you know, different things in the media. That's all it took. It just took the work ethic and took me my determination to go out there and get a different story than the rest. And it blew up from there. And so that's what I tell people, especially kids. You know, I used to speak at the Baltimore City Public Schools and just say, you know, if you have a work ethic, you literally just have to outwork your neighbor and you can do so much more. I mean, just showing up on time sometimes will promote you in a position because some people just don't have it. And so I went through life and in my childhood, you know, feeling kind of like, whoa, it's me, almost like a victim. And then one day I woke up and say, you know what, why not me? You know, yes, I might have lost my hair, but I didn't lose who I am as a person. And so I just focused on that and I kept going.
Kim, I'm a big sports fan, and Derek Jeter said that he may not have been the most talented person on the field, but he was going to find there were going to be one person that could outwork him. Okay. And that's what made him a Hall of Famer. And I think also you'd say Cal Ripken is in the same boat, don't you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, I'm an Orioles fan, and I know a lot about Cal Ripken. And people will tell you he wasn't the most talented, but he never gave up. He never gave up.
Yep, and never gave up and never walked off the field for over 2,138 games. So you know, and that's important. Yeah, he showed up every day. That's why he's in the Hall of Fame. To your credit, that's what Baltimore is all about. Kim, I got another question from one of the people who said, I found the left to be ecstatic whenever conservative voices are muted, and that the preferred argument strategy seems to be pouncing on the first thing that they can call absurd to drown out their point of view that you were building up. Given that, would you speak to any inherent strengths that you perceive are cemented within conservative ideas, and how important is it then to be able to reach those voters in time who may not be even aware that they're actually conservative?
Yeah, so this is a big issue within the Black community alone. So there's a lot of African Americans throughout America that have no idea that they're actually conservative. Like if they took the time to actually line up their views and their beliefs and their values, they would know that they were conservative. You know, many of us grew up in the church. You know, many of us have a certain standard, certain morals, and that's what we live by. But you know what? For me, it took me moving out of the home and absorbing the news, not yet filtered by my parents. I had to filter it and absorb it through myself. But that's a major part. And I also tell people, look, you know, I was on a conference call with Morgan State University students just the other day. And I said, look, you know, to move the needle in the Black community, you have to have allies on both sides of the aisle. You're not going to get anywhere by having just members of Congress that are Democrats. You know, you have to have them on both sides of the aisle. And I think Senator Tim Scott is a great example of that, who fights for school choice day in and day out. What we see in Baltimore City, those school vouchers and those charter schools, those are the schools where kids are actually achieving and exceeding expectations. And we need more of those. And so when you have an ally on both sides of the aisle, when you saw in President Trump's first term, you know, the control of the House and the Senate was by Republicans, and the Black community was saying, well, we don't have anyone speaking on our behalf. Well, that's because you don't have African-American and Republicans. So you don't have anyone in the House or the Senate to speak on your behalf. So hopefully that message got across. We'll see what happens, I guess, on Tuesday. But, you know, there's a lot, I think, where people don't understand exactly what conservative values mean and what being a Republican means. I know instinctively they think of, oh, you know, a Republican is racist, and you have many organizations within the community that tells you just that. So people do believe it. But, you know, I was on a phone yesterday with a church. They have over, I think, 280 people in their congregation, and they're actually going to throw their support behind me and announce it tomorrow. And this is an all-Black church. And they say, you know what? We're tired of the same old, same old. The same old gets us poor education, no job opportunities, and more crime and violence. And they get it. They actually get it.
Kim, you know, I don't know. I know you've been in all of this stuff right now and know what's going on in politics. AOC, who has been a very strong advocate, okay, for socialism, has said she's against school choice. However, in a couple of months ago, she advocated for her goddaughter to get into a charter school, which I always say, if you look at George Orwell, Animal House, Animal Farm, George Orwell said that everyone is equal, but there are some people that are more equal than others. Talk to us about your feelings about socialism and your feelings about school choice.
So school choice, like I said, means everything. If you look at the schools in Baltimore City that are doing well, it is the charter schools. Those schools have students that actually go off to college and become successful. For me, I look at how much we spend per pupil in the Baltimore City school system. We feed the students all day long. We could have boarding schools if we choose to. I worked in the Baltimore City school system in 2014 when there was a chief of directors. His name was Dr. Thompson, Ted Thompson, and he was talking about maybe proposing boarding schools within Baltimore City. They denied it, and they said that we didn't need it. He actually proposed it in Detroit, and they're actually doing very well.
Wow.
Sometimes you have to take kids out of the environment. And if you do home business in Baltimore City, you would agree, take some kids out of the environment, even if it was just for the week, they could go home on the weekend. They do achieve and they do better, and they're able to focus. There's a lot going on for some of the students, and people need to understand that. And that's why I fully support school choice. Now, AOC, if you look at AOC and her age, I think she is the poster child for No Child Left Behind. That was a Republican, that was a Republican stance. No Child Left Behind. Just passing students through, no matter if they got it or not. And I think that fell short. When kids got to college, they didn't pan out, and they had to drop out, or they weren't doing well enough to stay, and they went on probation, and they couldn't stay. But that is, to me, what AOC is. She is no child left behind. You either pass them through or you don't. And I think, honestly, she got through. She probably graduated from our college and became a bartender, because that's as far as she got, really.
Well, Kim, you know what? Here's the point. I think in a lot of cases, having grown up in the inner city, in New York City, in the Bronx, in Row House in the Bronx, I know what it's like to have to worry about finding a job, getting yourself out there. And unfortunately, if somebody gives you something, as you said, it's that's exactly the worth of it. If it's nothing, it's worth nothing. You seem to have worked yourself up. Tell us a little bit about your past and how you worked yourself up, and what that meant to you growing up.
Yeah, so like I said, I lost my hair at 15. I barely got through high school. I went on to Bowie State University. The kids were not so nice there, so I left. I then started working. I actually worked at TGI Fridays for a little while. And then from there, I went to the Georgetown University Hotel and Conference Center, where I worked as just a front desk attendant. And then after time, showing up to work on time, actually taking initiative and loving the job, I went to reservations manager and then to sales manager within a matter of 2 years. And so it was, I knew then, I said, wow, if I could climb the ladder this easy in the corporate world, I'm sure others can do it. And I'm sure I could take on so much more. So, I then after that met my now husband. We got engaged. He always lived in Baltimore. I then moved to Baltimore to be with him. I found out that the hotels in Baltimore City paid not even close. I think DC hotels pay double compared to what Baltimore hotels pay. And he said, you know what, just stay home and help out around the house. Of course, you can only do so many loads of laundry where you're just kind of like, okay, I got to do something else here. And that's how I started my nonprofit. And I geared it towards young women that might have had traumatic experiences like myself. And so that's what it was all about. And so, providing prom dresses and, trying to help out here and there. I met some of the parents, and I met so many mothers that were like, you know what, Kim, if I had the confidence, if I had what I needed, I would go back to work and I would try to earn this money so I could pay for things like prom. And I said, you know what, here's where we're going with this. I'm going to switch gears. We're going to go to helping the parents go back to work. And that's how it ended up that way. And I'm so glad that I did it, because we helped over 200 women become gainfully employed. Over 30% went on to be financially independent. And that is without any grants, any sponsorship or anything. We just did it on our own.
Wow. Kim, in Baltimore Magazine list, you were noted in 2018 as a woman who moves Maryland. What do you feel is the climate in Maryland politics for women?
Yeah, so, it's tough. It's almost like if you're not liberal, you're kind of counted out. But the great thing about this, and I talk about this with Chris Schaefer, he's the guy that runs Sharp Dressed Man, which basically did the same thing as Potential Me, my nonprofit, but for men. And he says, and he's very liberal, but he says, I know you. I know you are for the people. I know you care about people. I know you care about, if they have a job, if they have what they need. And he says, so it's going to be tough. And I agree. It's going to be tough if you don't kind of walk the walk and talk the talk and speak the language of a liberal Democrat. But at the same point, I never gave up on anyone. When I went to go help people, I never once asked what their party affiliation was. That was never important to me. It was, whether or not they had to drive to get the job and do what they had to do to keep it. And if you had that, whether you're coming out of incarceration, homelessness, rehabilitation, I didn't care. I helped you regardless. And I hope other people will look at this race and say, you know what? Kim Klacik's a Republican. If she believes that President Trump can help us, move this needle and get past everything we need to get past here in the Baltimore area, then maybe we should trust in her. Because I trusted in a lot of people, and many people would have said, oh, this person's going to relapse, or, oh, this person, they're not really serious. And they went on to be great individuals, successful, and now have careers, and they're taking care of their families and contributing their communities. So to me, it's like, you know what, just give me a chance, even if it's just for the special election, for that 6 months, give me the chance to show you that I can, number one, handle the job, and number two, do so much more for the community that they've never seen in the past 30 to 40 years.
Yeah. Kim, I'm gonna go into that for a second. In 2018, Maryland District 7 received over $16 million in federal grants and funds. In August of 2019, you identified West Baltimore as rat infested. Talk to us a little bit about why you said that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it wasn't actually my personal words. When I went to West Baltimore, I actually went in to talk to individuals that lived there on camera about a comment that Congressman Elijah Cummings made on a Sunday morning talk show. And he said that his constituents were afraid of President Trump. And I said, you know what? I've been in West Baltimore long enough, and I've helped many women get back to work, that I know that no one there is thinking about President Trump. But I said, you know what? I'm just going to go and I'm going to talk to people about it. I took my camera in. They kind of laughed at the notion that anyone's even thinking at President Trump. And I said, you know what? That's true. There were two individuals that actually took me through a couple neighborhoods. And their words were, it's rat infested. It's crime infested. Drug dealers do what they want. There are rodents everywhere. There's a lot of legal dumping. There's trash. And so their words were then repeated by myself and the president. And, then people took it as if that was our experience, or that was our, view of what was going on in West Baltimore, but it wasn't. We were just repeating what people were saying in the actual neighborhoods. And I actually had to explain this on that call with Morgan State University, because one of the students asked me about that. And I'm like, look, those weren't my words. That was the words of some young woman that lived there her entire life. And so, Baltimore Sun finally did some investigative work. There were 17,000 sanitation cases open within the department to show that in West Baltimore alone, people weren't getting the resources, or things weren't getting cleaned up. If you called them in Harbor East or any other nice neighborhood, they would answer the call 100% of the time. You wouldn't have to wait for anyone. And I said, look, there's a disparity. They kind of said, hey, that's a neighborhood where there's individuals that don't have the money to either support us, pay taxes, or donate to campaigns. And they kind of left them in the dust, and they were there to deal with the problems individually. And so when people said that, I said, look, if you go back and look at the video, it wasn't our words. And I mean myself and the president. It was the words of the people that lived there their entire lives. Right.
And understood. And having grown up in the South Bronx, I'm pretty much aware of burned out buildings and having that kind of situation. And the only thing that'll turn that neighborhood around is building up the people in the neighborhood, and so that when people do get out, that they come back and they help their neighbors get on their feet. And I think that's really important. And I applaud you for going out there and finding that. Kim, I've got a question from Bo Herridges. And Bo asks, hello, Kimberly, good luck to you. My question is a two-part question. The first part is, if you win, what is the number one thing, according to your constituents, that you need to begin working on? And number two, do you have an issue that will be your priority, and what is it?
Absolutely. So great question. Accountability and transparency is number one. We've seen so many, like you said, millions of dollars that went into District 7 that is nowhere to be found. We need to open the books, find out which contractors were paid, find out where this money went. And if, we've got crooks intercepting some of this money, we need to show and expose who they are. We need to get them out of office and get them out of the way. After that, term limits is a huge thing on my task list. We've got, you can see down today, members of Congress that are going back and forth and fighting about whether or not they're going to help the people that elected them. How is that even possible? I don't know. But a lot of those members of Congress have been there for 20, 30 years. That's insane. No more than 6 terms should be served for anyone. And that's including, members of Congress, in the House, and the Senate. And I also want to end the lifelong pensions. Once you leave Congress, I shouldn't have to pay for you or your family as you go on to do whatever it is you're going to do. If you were an effective member of Congress, you made it so that when you leave after your 6th term, or even before that, you can go into the private sector, get a good job, and you can take care of your family that way. We shouldn't be paying for pensions. Another big thing is the slush fund book. There's that secret book in the Department of Treasury that's basically hiding all the members of Congress that paid out to harassment cases or victims of harassment over the past, I guess that was, how many years is that now? That was since 1995. And so we need to, unveil who those people are. If they're still in office, they need to resign. And those people need to return that money and actually, step up to the plate and admit what they did. You don't pay out people and say, oh, hush up as I go on to be a member of Congress for years and years. That's not fair to the victim. It's not fair to their families. And it's not fair to the people that elect them each year. So there's, for me, it's a lot about accountability and transparency. There's a lot of laws on the books that should probably be rolled back. I mean, how much do we hear about gun control? In Baltimore City, it is so hard to get a concealed carry permit. Yet criminals walk around with guns, any day of the week. And so we see these numbers, like we saw 348 people were murdered last year in Baltimore City. But you saw the number of carjackings. Armed carjackings were at over 420 armed carjackings in 1 year. That's insane. There were some armed carjackings where they actually rode off with people's children in the back seat. These are issues. These are problems we need to address.
No, I agree. From Corrick MacArthur, he said, how transparent have past administrations been, and what are your opinions on transparency?
I don't think they've been transparent at all. I think, honestly, with Klacik and Fume, when he left in 1995, people have to remember he quit in the middle of his term. And then he said he was going off to be the president of the NAACP, where he could do more and better work. Well, that's interesting because he went off, and basically that's where he got the harassment claims for young women. And then they accused him of mismanaging funds and stealing money. So, look, I don't think there's ever been any transparency. Congressman Elijah Cummings, I know he was loved by many. I'm not saying he wasn't a good guy. I'm not saying Fume is not a good guy. I'm just saying when it comes to money and, making sure the taxpayer and their constituents come first, I just don't see it. I don't see it at all. And you can't tell me that millions of dollars was poured into the Penn North Corridor after the riots in 2015, and no one knows where any of that is. And you have to understand, when President Trump called out Congressman Cummings, and he was asking, where that money went, what happened, what he was working on, people have to remember he was very quiet. He was silent. There was not many answers coming out of his entire office. And so people have to understand that there's something going on there. When Fume left Congress, he called Cummings and asked him to take his place. Why is that? And why is it now that Cummings has passed away, unfortunately, that he is coming now to stand in his place? I think there are a lot of secrets that could be exposed. And like I said before, I have no friends in office. I have no special interest groups. I will follow the money, no fear nor favor. I don't care where it leads. But people need to understand what's going on, who's been stealing money from them, and why anything hasn't changed in so many years.
Oh, I agree. You know, Kim, one of the things that's really important to note is that while all this was going on, prior to that, Congressman Cummings was working hard to get access to the president's tax returns. And I tell people that the IRS is not afraid to audit your tax returns and not afraid to make you guilty until proven innocent. If there was something in President Trump's tax returns, I guarantee that the IRS would have found it prior to Mr. Cummings looking at it. And unfortunately, people don't understand that the only reason that the Democrats want the president's tax returns is so that they can embarrass him on what he has done, not the fact that he did anything wrong. I had a couple more questions for you, and that is, Mr. Mfume, I know I've heard you a couple of times say that, ask Mr. Mfume for a debate. Has he ever responded to you?
No, he has not. We've asked, not just my campaign, but Fox 45 Baltimore asked. I believe there was an ask from WBAL. We announced it on the C4 show that we wanted to debate him, and he has not responded to any of those requests at all.
Oh, well, hey, listen, if he comes up, we'll contact him tonight. And if he'd like to debate you, ready for tomorrow night?
Oh, my gosh. I'll be ready tomorrow morning. I would love to debate him. I would love to talk about what he did in office as far as the 1994 mass incarceration bill, as far as, the crack epidemic that was basically plaguing Baltimore City when he just decided to up and quit. I've got so many questions for him. I would love to debate him. Please ask him.
We will. We'll reach out right after this town hall. Okay, Kim, I'm going to give you the next 10 minutes to wrap it up, and anything you'd like to tell 5 to 10 minutes, tell your constituents directly. You've got the floor. Go give it to them. Kim.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah, you got the floor. Go. Anything you'd like to tell your constituents, closing it up.
Yeah. So the first thing I would never tell anyone who they should vote for. I am a proud American, and I love that we have the right to vote. My ancestors fought for the right to vote. That is African Americans and women. We had to fight for that right, and so I fully believe that everyone should take advantage of that right. If you have not received your ballot and you live in District 7, you can actually email absentee. I believe it's .md@maryland.gov and get an absentee ballot or a ballot emailed to you, and then you can get it in the mailbox by Tuesday. I don't suggest that you vote in person, but if that's what you want to do, you can do it on April 28th at either Edmondson High School, Howard County Fairgrounds, or Martin's West in Baltimore County. But my main thing is, let's just switch it up, even if it's just for a term or the rest of the vacated term. I don't have any friends to adhere to. And if they've been, spending money or taking taxpayer money, I could actually open these books and say, look, this is what's been going on. This is why we haven't seen a change. And, right now we see a lot with crime and violence. It's not just in Baltimore City. It creeps over to Baltimore County and Howard County. And these are things that need to be addressed. The education system needs to be addressed. In Howard County, they passed something called the Kerwin Commission. That's $32 billion thrown into the education system that doesn't actually measure results. So we're going to be raising taxes over the next 5 years on absolutely everything. And if we're going to do that, which I don't think we should at least have the results and know that our children are being completely educated. And another issue that I see is basically, I know a lot of people think about Planned Parenthood and abortions, and people are pro-life, and I fully understand that. I have a 3-year-old daughter. I love her to death. I chose life, but we have to understand that sometimes people choose this route or go this route because they feel they don't have the means and they don't have the responsibility beforehand to actually control the situation. I want oral contraceptives over the counter. This is the birth control pill over the counter. So young women don't come to that fork in the road and have to decide last minute if they choose life or choose to end a life. We should be able to offer that. 35 countries around the world already do. This is just something that the FDA likes to regulate. And I think when we take that out of the picture, we could probably close a lot more Planned Parenthood clinics because they won't be as needed. And so, there's a lot of things that we can do just by rolling back and not spending any money at all. And that's my thing. I'm for economic development. I talk with the administration back and forth about what we can do in the greater Baltimore area, whether it's, actually utilizing our vast port and bringing more career opportunities through and offering incentives for businesses. There's so much more that we could be doing that we're just not doing. And I hope people understand that. I hope they give me the chance to do that. I know it's only going to be about 6 months for this term that's vacated to be filled. But I know in 6 months, I could do so much. And if they just give me that chance, I would be so grateful. And if they feel that I don't do a good job in that 6 months, well, you know what? You got November. You can vote for somebody else. And I understand that, and I would agree to it. But I believe with my connections within the administration, the fact that I want to work across the aisle, my opponent has talked about he's not even willing to work across the aisle. He's not willing to work with the president. But what would that accomplish for the American people? We need someone that's willing to work with whoever it is to get the job done. And that is me. I am that someone. And so I hope people understand that. I hope they understand this is, nothing about personal gain. I never wanted Baltimore to be attacked. Some people said the president attacked it. That wasn't my intentions at all. I was just trying to get people help that just wasn't getting any help for years. They weren't getting any of the resources. And that was astonishing to me, considering the millions of dollars that was poured into their very neighborhood. So that's what my intentions were. I'm glad that their DPW, Department of Public Works, is now, fixing that issue. But as we go on and go further, I know I can make a greater impact by being in office and having true oversight of federal funds.
Well, Kim, I'm working on an article for New Right Network to discuss the not million, but billion, $17 billion that was sent to your district in 2018 alone. So we're going to be looking at that in depthly over the next couple of months. I'll say this, Kim, from New Right Network, that I'll be honest with you. If you are a person in Baltimore in District 7 that's looking for the answer to find a way to get out of where you're at, talk to Kim. Kimberly Klacik knows what you're going through. She's been there. She's down there. She's gotten her hands dirty with you. Okay. And she'd be willing to help you both in her not-for-profit if she wins as a representative for District 7. And Kim, one last question before we wrap it up, and that is, what would you like to say to your family and friends as kind of like a last item to put up there?
Yeah, so a big shout out to my husband. We've been married for 8 years, and he's always supported me through everything. When I told him I wanted to start the nonprofit, he was always there for me and supported it. And I told him I wanted to run for office and try to make a greater impact. And he said, you know what? Here we go. My 3-year-old daughter, you can see one of her things that she loves to say is vote for mommy. She's amazing. My mom, who's not a Trump supporter, says, you know what, I fully support you and everything you want to do. If you feel like you can work with this administration to make, the greater Baltimore area better, then I fully support you. And then to all my friends, I feel so bad because, I have no social life right now, Frank. I haven't had one for about a year now. And so they're kind of just calling me like, hey, what's going on? Can we see you? And now the pandemic hit and we can't see each other at all. So hopefully my friends are still there after all is said and done. But you know what? The most important thing to me is the constituents and those that have just been waiting for resources and waiting for help that never actually received it. And, there's a lot of people that had a lot of hope in, local government and even the federal government, and they never came through. And I just wanted to show people, you know what, there's somebody that's running for office that actually cares about you, cares about your family, cares about your community, and cares about where you end up in life. And that is myself.
Kim, I want to thank you so much for joining us for New Right Network, nrnplus.com. We're going to sign off. We're going to hand it over to Obi to get our out music. And thank you, Kim, and I enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being patient with me. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
You got it. Okay, Obi, it's all yours.
Thank you very much, Kim. In a really beautiful way, and okay. I know you want to retweet it. Can you give us a follow back, New Right Network?
Kim? All right, well, we'll get that.